Okay, so again, we're going to clap us in. We're going to talk for like 10 seconds, and we're just going to start. Okay.
All right.
3, 2, 1.
Just you?
That's okay. We just needed somebody to clap.
Okay.
And I don't know, just because I'm such a noob with the editing is just necessary. All right, I guess we will begin. Hello! Welcome to Founders Gambit. This is a show where people who want to be founders talk about wanting to be founders, or people who are actually founders, they talk about that too. Man, I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, I'm the host. My name is Dillon. I'm here with Brian Wang, Walter Chen. So
I like that you called him Brian Wang.
Wang. No one says Wang.
I'm impressed.
I'm actually Chinese, so I know how it's pronounced.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I mean, I
know.
could have gone with alternatives if you wanted. Yeah. Anyway, so, Brian, you want to tell people a little more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Brian Wang, the co-founder and CEO at Photocracy, which is an online fitness platform that helps people get in better shape through guidance and coaching. So we've been at this for 4 years, and we've actually done a lot. So it's kind of hard to wrap up what we do in one sentence, but the quickest way to summarize it is that we help you get in better shape through personalized coaching and guidance, which I just said. So
cool.
I'm repeating myself.
Cool. Very nice.
Yeah. I'm Walter Chen, founder and CEO of I Done This, and it's a daily stand-up replacement for your startup because daily stand-ups suck.
They do suck. Oh.
Yeah. We've been at it for a few years now, and we have great companies like Reddit, Shopify, Heroku, Twitter, Uber using our product.
Very cool. And I'm Dillon. I have not actually started a real company yet, but I just quit my job yesterday. I am unemployed, and I am incredibly excited to finally be starting a company. I've been waiting for, literally, I've been saving money for 3 years to be able to do this. I've a year of savings in the bank, just young, single, unemployed, debt-free, and very, very excited to do something for myself for once. So,
wait, how old are you? I'm curious. If you don't mind me asking,
I graduated in 2010.
Okay, 2010.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll say that.
Okay.
No, just as a developer, you learn very quickly that you never want to show your age.
Really?
Really?
Why is
Yeah,
that?
because people will automatically try to look for reasons to discount you.
Huh.
And at my level, or at my age, okay, I'm not as old as I want to be. And I have experienced many, many times where immediately the amount of influence that I would receive as a developer would decrease as soon as people knew how young I was.
Gotcha.
So I'm just going to say that
Gotcha.
I graduated college in 2010.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's going to, for most people, if they're hiring well or they're not a total idiot, they should be looking for that person's experience and their aptitude versus what their age is, right? There's plenty of people who are 19 years old and they're super amazing.
And in the startup world, you want to sell yourself as younger. You know, I'm the amazing.
Yeah.
I'm 16.
When you're 30, it's like, oh shit, this guy's over the hill. You know,
dude,
He's past his prime.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it, in the end, it all comes down to whoever's hiring and whoever wants to be hired, they just need to be on the same page. And that page can be anything that they want, but it has to be the same. So, I don't really know. I don't think anybody's been around the block as much as they might imagine all the time, given that there are just so many crazy people out there. But
that's cool. So you've been almost basically saving since you graduated from college.
Right. I've been saving for
crazy.
a very, very long
Which is
time.
amazing, man.
Yeah, for a very long time. Been reading, and actually a big thing that's driven me to start up is that I've been reading. I read mostly about programming, honestly, in my spare time, but a lot of it is about starting companies as well.
Yeah.
I studied business formally in college. Brian and I went to the same school, and I think after a while, I think the first cue for me that told me that I might be ready to start up is that none of the articles, or very few of the articles that I was reading were surprising me anymore. They were starting to repeat themselves, and it wasn't as fun anymore. So I was that was the first time I was thinking to myself, well, maybe I'm actually ready.
I think that one of the things that you very quickly learn, and I'm sure you're going to learn this yourself, is there is an enormous gap between just reading articles and content and stories and then doing it yourself. You can try as hard as you like to be as well prepared as possible, but when you're in the thick of it, you're nothing could have actually prepared me for this when it comes to hiring my first employee, firing for the first time, raising money, everything that goes into this idea of finding product market fit. It's easy to read those concepts and watch the lectures and all that sort of stuff, but when you're doing it day to day, then you really know, you're like, this is a lot of hard work. And it's the less flashy stuff. It's, you're basically going up and down all the time with it. But, the real learning happens when you're in the thick of it. So I'm excited for you because you're about to get into it. You're about to get into it.
I would say the flip of that is that a lot of times the reading kind of takes a new life of its own after you go and experience it, right? Then you sort of appreciate and understand what they're trying to say. Yeah, it's interesting because we were hanging out with Noah Kagan the other day, who's like a famous marketing guy. And we're saying, like, what's the number one marketing mistake people make? And he said, it's not getting validation for your idea. It's like building before you try to sell it and get validated. And it's something that we have to remind ourselves of every day because it's something that's just like that you want to do for some reason. So it's like, even as much as you read it, you still want to, all these things, all these learnings like take a long time to process and actually.
Yeah, and I think that's the other side of it is it's easy to read a lot of content out there and other people's experience, but oftentimes it'll go in one ear and out the other. And at least for me, I've found that I've actually had to experience something and read something as well and have it repeatedly happen and reinforce itself until it's actually something that I hold as a fundamental principle.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
I don't read something like, okay, this is gospel and I'm going to remember every single day. Like I found for myself, I have to actually get burned a few times until I really know what I'm doing in a certain area. Yeah. So experience is super important. And like Walter said, when you revisit a lot of that content, you're viewing it from a completely different lens. You're like, oh, I get it now. I get what that person was talking about.
Yeah. No, definitely. But actually, that makes me curious. So I was talking to a Teal fellow the other day, and I was like, what are some of the things that inspired you to start a company?
Hey, can we actually take a step back in case there's anyone in the audience who doesn't know what a Teal fellow is, just for like 10 seconds?
Yeah. Teal fellow, Peter Thiel, like famed investor, entrepreneur, whatever, started this fellowship where he paid people to drop out of college.
And start a company.
Yeah. And a lot of these people are really impressive, successful people, right? So this guy, Zach, who's the founder of Bowery.io, which is a great new company in New York, he dropped out and actually he ended up finishing college, but...
I always wish I could call myself a crazy rock star college dropout. I really wish I could, but I was talking to him because he's like 21, or he's a pretty young guy, and I was saying, hey, like, what are some of the things that inspired your generation of people to start startups? And because he went to Harvard, he said one of the things that actually really inspired him was the social network.
Of course.
Which is kind of crazy and mind-boggling to a person of my age. I think for me, like, a lot of the stuff that inspired me was like Paul Graham's writings, reading Hacker News. Like, I read Paul Graham's stuff when I was in college, 2001. It's like when I started reading 2001, 2002. Started reading
ahead of the curve.
But I'm curious, like for Brian, like what are some of the things? Because for a lot of us, I think it's stuff that you read and stuff that you saw. Like I watched Startup.com when I was, a kid or whatever. What are some of those things that like sort of made you want to do what you're doing?
Yeah, I think I'd always had this thought in the back of my head in the latter years of college, hey, I think someday I'll start my own company or go down the entrepreneurial track, but it was an abstract idea at the time. So this was 2007, 2008. And so I just went for a regular job after graduation, started working in consulting in New York. And my first job, I didn't perform very well. It was just a bad environment. I performed poorly, and I lost my job 9 months later. And so... at that point, I was at a crossroads wondering, should I actually go for it or should I just find another job, save some more money, kind of put that on hold? Because my idea was maybe when I'm in my late 20s and I've saved up some more money, got some more experience, and then I'm ready to go. So I got my second job. I went up to Connecticut and I worked for a company called Kantar Retail. And I had been doing that for a little bit, but pretty much the moment I moved to Connecticut and started working there, I thought, this isn't for me. I don't like this career track. I'm not happy at this job. So immediately I went back, I revisited this concept of entrepreneurship. And I was also vaguely aware that the startup scene in New York was starting to get a lot more active around that time, which was around 2009, 2010. So that in combination with the fact that there's a few other factors there too. Like I was dating a girl who was in New York. I wanted to be back in New York. I wanted to start a company with my best friend from school, Dick. And, I thought that there was an opportunity at my age at the time, 24. I didn't have any debts. I had a little bit of money saved. Why not go for it? And so, I spent a lot of time during the period of 2009, 2010 doing the same thing you did, going and hanging out in Hacker News, reading TechCrunch. This was when I was still using RSS, so I would be constantly on RSS to see what the content from TechCrunch and VentureBeat was being posted on. And I bought Founders at work. I was reading that every night. So I was getting really amped up about this sort of stuff. And then so in 2010, we had Dick and I had mentally committed to quitting our jobs sometime that year and then going for it. So, it was just kind of this confluence of factors.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. That's cool.
I feel like that was something similar for me, even though I haven't actually done real work yet. But the preparation is maybe the only thing I can really talk about for me. And I remember one of the things I was consistently reading and hearing was that you're never really fully ready. The stars are never going to align. But actually what happened for me was that the stars definitely aligned. Like all of a sudden, everything all at once. And like I said earlier, like young, single, debt-free, money saved, completely unfulfilled with employment, and just frustrated with always having to make concessions. And the only concession I want to make is to make my customers happy. That's really, in my mind, the only thing I want to do. Otherwise, I need to be fucking in charge right now. So really, just like a huge galaxy of stars, which just all of a sudden was aligning. I can't not do it. And I think, you mentioned Founders at Work earlier. I think that book kind of puts off a lot of people who might have been interested before they started reading it. And YC is
Why is that, you think?
Yeah. I think it's because of the amount of hard work that these founders are talking about.
Gotcha.
They're all I sacrificed so much. And then right now, Sam Altman's Stanford startup class is really hot. And Dustin Moskowitz was talking, Moskowitz. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
That's cool.
But he said he basically listed all of these good and bad reasons to be founders. He listed a lot of bad reasons to be founders. There was only one good reason for him to be a founder, and the reason was you just can't help yourself. You can't not fix these problems that you want to solve.
What I thought was interesting about that, his entire point was he almost made it seem like this one particular idea was so important to you that you had no choice but to try to bring it to life. And it was just burning. It was almost like a force of its own that was bursting out of your chest almost. And I found that to be an interesting concept. But I also struggled with that idea a little bit as well because it seems to me that for most entrepreneurs, they're not necessarily going to have a series of these things throughout their life. And maybe they will. Maybe after the first company, they find another problem that they really latch onto and need to create a solution for. But I think they talk about passion. They talk about what do you really care about, and the other side of it is, especially when in the context of fundraising and investors, people are always looking for what's the product or the market team fit. Is this person the right person to solve this problem? And I always wonder if you're on your second company or your third company. What does that story look like? Because I've known plenty of first-time founders who started their company because they experienced something in their life that made them realize, hey, this part of the world really sucks. This problem sucks. I experienced this. I have some expertise. Let's go after it. If it's gone to the second or third company, I always wonder, how does that activation energy build up for that new idea, and it seems like it has to come from a different angle in some ways, almost like everything in your life led up to this one moment for your first company, and then what's the context for the second and third, if that makes sense.
What's the inertia for it?
That's interesting because I think I see the flip more often, which is the first company is the first company is sort of inspired by the idea that you want to start a company, and then so you do something really stupid, you do something dumb, and then when you learn what it takes to succeed, you realize that you need to work on an idea that's at least more interesting to succeed, then you sort of reflect on what are those things that are important to you, and then do something more sort of close to the heart. But I think a lot of this too is sort of, I would say, slightly overwrought, at least for me. It's what's a good reason to start a company? I don't know, because you feel like it. I don't need to get, approval from Dustin Moskowitz's list of approved startup reasons why it's okay to start a company. I think some of his points are well made, which is if you want to get rich, probably easier to work for someone else. Probably easier to work for Uber right now, I'd probably say, or Snapchat. But and so like some points well made, but I would say like it's like if you want to start a company, what's a good reason? Well, I don't know. I felt like
some of that advice sometimes almost seems it's like either self-serving, like as an investor, I don't want this market to be crowded with stupid fucking ideas, or the other side of it's they're trying to warn people off. It's too scary. It's too painful. Don't even bother. You're an idiot if you're going to do this, except for the right reason. It almost seems like they're trying to do a favor for you. But it's like
it is self-serving. It's like when people brag about like how low an acceptance rate is for the school they went to.
Right.
Like that's the feeling that I got in a lot of ways. Even a lot of the advice that I hear now with like when people, I mean, like I think it's nice to hear about how hard work it is because like if you get fired up by hearing about it, then you're probably a strong candidate. But like if you're turned away, then like maybe. I think on the one hand, there are some people who probably want to do it, and maybe I don't know about the wrong. I think wrong is a strong word, but maybe for a reason that's not compelling enough for them to like go through the entire slog. I do think the people who will go through the whole like the fear of like how much work it is, I think they'll be fine. And then for everyone else, like I think there are a lot of different ways you can do it. It's not just like one way. But
I think it's useful advice, and I think particularly in the context of entrepreneurs, quote unquote, like the people who are always talking about like starting something but they never do it.
Yeah, girl.
What?
Sorry, I'm gonna stop talking.
I feel like we just like went in a completely different direction.
No, he's feeling you right now.
Oh, he's feeling it. All right, okay. So next time you start like humping the air, I'm gonna know that you're just like really into what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But anyways, the point is, people are gonna go after, or they're gonna not, and there's plenty of reasons for why. But I've just been thinking a lot about like this concept of serial entrepreneurship as well. It's fascinating to me. Like, do you have the personality for someone who's just going to always start companies as opposed to I did it once, I'm joining another company? I think different types of people will respond in different ways.
I know. For me, like that's a really interesting thought about like putting like your entire life's energy into like your first company and where do you get it for the second. Like, me personally, I feel like my passions have changed. Historically, my passions have changed maybe every like 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. So like back when I was a kid, my very, very first passion was martial arts. Like I was like every other Asian kid, and I studied Taekwondo.
But wait, you're Chinese. That's messed up.
Yeah,
it's messed up.
Man, it's okay. I did Taekwondo too.
Yeah, he's Chinese.
Jeez,
it's not like they have like Kung Fu classes out there.
Yeah, man. Just the Koreans know how to make money.
True.
Yeah. Oh, shout out to Joanna behind the camera, by the way. Thank you, Joanna, for all your hard work. Yeah. So we're all a lot taller than her, so she's like doing a lot of hard work to like bring the camera up to like eye level right now, which is really cool. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Sometimes I wonder like if we'll look cooler if we look taller on camera, but you know what? It's an experiment. We'll try it out. Oh, and also I'm going to be expecting to distribute this show to like all my friends, and hopefully it'll pick up from there. But I know some people are going to say it, so I'm just going to say it first. Yes, we're all Asian. We're all Asian.
If you're not watching this,
if you're
just listening,
if you're just listening, I guess maybe.
If you didn't pay attention to the names on the actual, the description of the show. Although your name is very deceptive.
Yeah, what kind
my name is my original name in Chinese is Lin, which means forest in Chinese, and my parents moved into a really small white town, and they wanted to fit in.
Right, so they went
so
forest.
We changed it. So yeah, we went full white. There.
That was way
really
past Anglican. Oh my god, I can't say the word.
Wait, where are your parents from?
China, Shanghai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I'm actually like 100% Han Chinese, like the largest ethnicity on the face of the planet.
Yeah, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm 100% Han Chinese.
None of that minority shit.
Despite my last name, despite my crazy last name, I'm actually like typical Chinese.
Your parents just went full anglicized, just like went way past it.
Yeah, they really did. There was a lot of fear at the time.
Where'd you grow up?
Grove City, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah, good times.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I grew up in Texas, so.
Oh, no way.
A bunch of white people, but it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. I love the white people. Yeah.
Oh, your audience level just dropped to 0.
I mean, we're all accepting here.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
Anywho's, what we were talking about. Serial entrepreneurship and like the attitudes around that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so you're taking your first step.
Yeah.
What's the next step for you?
Well, I'm going to go on vacation for a little bit. I'm going to visit my parents.
Awesome.
I'm going to be a good Asian son. And then maybe I shouldn't have done that on the air.
That's all right. We already went past we went past
anyway,
the barrier.
So I'm going to do that. And then when I come back, there's a lot of unknowns. I don't actually have a product or a service in mind, but I do have a market in mind. And the market that I'm interested in serving at the moment is nascent startups just starting out, probably started by non-technical people, because in my short experience so far, I've come to realize that people who are programmers, no matter how good or bad they are, they're always going to have an opinion about how I'm going to do my work. And it's like, motherfucker, I'm the fucking programmer. Do you actually want to delegate to me and let me own this area of complexity, or do you want to micromanage? Because I'm not about that micromanage business. So I do think non-technical people are probably going to be easier for me to serve. And also with this whole lean startup thing, everyone, I don't know, the point of software is to automate. Just automate, so you don't have to do it over and over again. But web development's a very repetitive kind of business. I've done the same work in my career many times. Every single page app is, for the most part, the same. All this talk about Angular versus Backbone versus Ember is just retarded. But yeah, so that's kind of my take. I see a huge market where people are spending a lot of money on freelancers right now, and I feel like I might be able to. I don't really know. I think I can automate parts of it, but it's a very complex software problem. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of browser difficulties.
So are you?
I don't know.
But if you're targeting non-technical founders, non-technical folks, right? So
I don't know just yet. I still need to talk to them to figure. The general idea is nascent startups. Uh-huh. My hunch right now, my hypothesis, which I still need to test and validate, is that non-technical people will be easier to work with. I don't actually know.
But what's the problem that you're solving for them, though? You're talking about the repetitiveness of web development and the best-known practices and so on. I get that, right? And when you look at things like that, it starts to become commoditized, and inefficiencies can be brought out from that. But I'm wondering, are you looking at changing the way all this is done? That seems like a very ambitious thing to do.
No, so
I'm taking advantage of those dynamics in some way.
So I'm going to bite off the smallest chunk I can. And so right now I'm going to be a solo entrepreneur. I'm not going to have a co-founder. I'm not going to have employees, so that I'll only have one person to account for. And I want to try to, I know it's difficult to actually quantify, but I would like to bite off the smallest chunk I can to basically be self-sufficient, pay my own bills and everything. And then after that, I can move up from there if I do a good job. I don't, the whole problem itself is very complicated, but the problem is a sum of a lot of smaller problems. So, and each of these problems is something that people are already spending money to try to solve.
So let's go through this exercise. I'm interested because as an entrepreneur, a large part of entrepreneurship often is, how do you succinctly pitch? How do you talk about a story really clearly, right? Yeah. So I still have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. The basic idea is people are hiring freelancers to do work for them, which is cool, but all of these freelancers basically are doing the same work every single time.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of potential to automate that. And I think that's as succinctly as I can put it right now, given how much I know at the moment.
So are entrepreneurs spending too much money on repetitive work?
Entrepreneurs are spending, given what the market is supplying right now, I think they're doing the best that they can. But I think the market itself is inefficient.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's all a theory. And again, I still need to talk to people. My first objective will be to get to know my users as well as possible. So I want to I don't know the next time I'm going to write another proprietary line of code. I have absolutely no idea when I'm going to draw another paycheck. But my very first priority will be to get in front of as many of these people who I now consider probably my ideal users and talk to them about their problems. And given that I don't know, people talk about living on the edge of a new area of the world. The edge that I've been living on is web development. So I wanted to talk about their web development problems and try to figure out how that stuff can be better. I have a lot of strong opinions on how web development as a whole should be and how that differs from how it is right now. But I don't really know what people are willing to spend on yet, and there are a lot of different things that I could do. But
no, it sounds like I think it sounds like you're thinking about it. Brian's kind of in a place where he's grilling people. He wants to give it back a little bit, for the grillings that you're receiving.
Well,
it's important for me to hear though.
No, but it sounds to me like Dillon is saying, well, here's the level of specificity I can give given what I know. So I think there's some humility in that. I think it's cool.
Yeah, and you still have to figure it out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And the right thing to do is to talk to people and understand what pain points there are. Right? Once you can really zero in on that, then you can start to think about what's the right solution.
Yeah. That's what, like, really, I just don't know enough, and I need to know more. Because I can kind of understand how people will start coding and start building like a product. And like, okay, so when we say startup, I think a lot of us are like in like software, web, tech kind of stuff. Like a startup does not have to require software or the internet. That might be a stretch, but I mean, yeah, you don't
that's cool.
You don't need technology as a core competency to like be a startup.
Right. The conventional understanding of is around technology, but sure.
Right. So I mean, I have nothing more to say about that. Yeah. So I mean, like, I can understand the comfort of like being in a text editor, but at the same time, me personally, like, I try to write as little code as possible because one of my biggest pet peeves is doing useless work, and I get a huge kick out of like commits that are incredibly slim or are removing more lines than they are adding, and that's just me personally. That's just my style as someone who likes to build things. I like to be as minimalistic as possible, and to me, building something when I know there's like no actual reason for it, it's like if I'm building something for fun, that's different. But if I'm building something that is actually intended to make money, like, to me, it's actually very counterintuitive to just start building when I can't be guaranteed. Like, as a developer, I'm super selfish with my work. I want every single line of code that I write to be meaningful. Like, the crazy analogy I'm thinking of right now is like every single stroke of my samurai sword needs to like draw blood.
Oh my goodness.
That's really it.
Okay.
Pan-Asian.
Yeah, but like, okay, so yeah, the point is like I want to be effective, and like there needs to be some kind of validation for me to put in that work, because to me, like, code is the most expensive thing that I've ever. Like, coding is the most expensive thing that I've ever done. Code is the most expensive thing that I've ever created. So I want to minimize the amount of expense that I'm incurring.
Sure.
Therefore, I want to write as little code as possible.
Sure. It's just it's hard to balance, right?
Yeah.
When you're working in organizations or startups that are trying to meet deadlines or hit certain milestones, you're going to accrue technical debt. Like, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
And so you always have to balance the philosophy against the practical business needs. And I myself, I don't have an answer for that, but it's just a reality of operating these things. But anyways, going back to the core topic of this, right? So we're talking about starting up for the first time, right? What do you think are things, Walter? I'll ask you the question. When you were starting out, what were some things that you didn't know at the time that you wish you did?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if I can remember what I was. Things I didn't know. That's a really hard question, because it's hard to, now that you know something, it's hard to remember what it was even like.
I mean, for those of you, Walter, you've been at this for a while as well, as long as Brian, right?
Yeah. We basically started at the same time. That's how we met. We met at like a Techstars event. But yeah, I think one thing is that, and this is something that I'm still kind of learning, is that like I would say like business is like a people business, and I think underestimating how important relationships and dealing with individuals is, and this is something Brian appreciate, is hard, and like, as someone who had no prior experience like managing anyone or anything like that, that has been like a major, that's like one of the things I'm worst at. So I would say, I'd say underestimating, the importance of people in the building a successful business.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that as well. I think that spending your time and investing in building those relationships with people. I hate to use the word networking. It seems kitschy to me, but building out a network of trusted advisors and friends and allies, I think, is super important. And to start doing that early is really, really critical. And some people will say, when you're first starting out, don't worry about that stuff. Don't go to meetups. Don't take people out to coffee. Your time is precious. Work on product market fit. And I agree with that on the surface. But there are plenty of cases that I've experienced where knowing the right people, having that prior relationship is critical to the business's success, or in some cases just survival, right? So I think that when it's time to call in help, and you don't have anyone to call on at those times, it can be really, really really hard on you. So I think that's really important. And the second thing about this question of what I wish I had known or was better prepared for was to be just spending more time in being deliberate about what you're really building and how to pitch that into the kind of greater world. I think as a founder, your job is to be an evangelist, to be an advocate, and you're in this weird position where you don't even know what you're building half the time, and you're kind of still defining it on the fly, but you still have to be able to distill that into its component parts and put that into the world as succinctly as possible. I know for me, I have the tendency to ramble and go on for a long time, and I'm probably doing that right now. But you want to tell the entire story. But there's nothing wrong with the elevator pitch. X for Y. This is the 5-sentence summary, and so on and so forth. And just like let that person know exactly what you're doing. Yeah. I think it's so important because people don't have time to hear the entire thing, and they'll lose the plot if you do.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that's super important. And I agree that is one of your problems.
Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. So, man, I was intending on taking a break for us. Let me check how long we've been going at it.
Cool.
No way. All right, yeah, let's take a really, really quick break, and then we'll be back. Thanks, guys.
Sweet.
Oh.
All right.
And we're back. All right. So there are a few other things we want to talk about. One of them is how to prepare financially to actually start up. And the other one is having a technical co-founder. If you want to start a tech company, if you want to start a tech startup and you don't know how to code, what do you do about that? So, and Walter decided that we should talk about the money first.
Yeah. You know, I think it's an interesting question. I had a bunch of money saved up because I used to be a lawyer, so it wasn't a problem for me, but my co-founder didn't have any money. So that was one of the reasons why we raised money relatively early. I think that was a mistake. Because you want to raise money when you're ready to accelerate your business, not because you have to pay yourself. So I think that was a bad decision. So I think in retrospect, it probably would have been better to either start making money really quickly, or for me to like support my co-founder or something like that, or to do consulting on the side. I think that's probably better than. I think the worst option is probably raise money. So not to say that I'm not happy with our investors or the way things currently are, but I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, I think for a lot of folks, when they're first starting out, they don't have the luxury of raising money either, right? Statistically, you're not going to raise money as a startup. Yeah. So for me personally, I really hadn't saved up that much money at the time. I think I had probably, in raw numbers, like a little less than 10 grand saved up by that point. And then I had like a car like I could sell, which for like a little bit extra. So it was like very little money, actually, relatively speaking. The thing that people always recommend is have about a year's worth of savings. I think we had planned to, with the apartment that we were moving to and the expenses that we were setting ourselves at, I had like a little less than a year or so of money saved up. And I was also doing a little bit of like SAT tutoring on the side on the weekends, just to that actually paid my rent bill, which was crazy. It was just a few hours a week, but because I was living very cheaply, like I lucked out. My monthly rent bill was probably $500, $600 a month.
In New York.
In Brooklyn, it was like
Clinton Hill.
But it was like a very cheap apartment. So doing the SAT tutoring on the side covered that side, and then like the money I had saved up left me with a little bit less than a year of personal runway. And so it was a similar situation with my co-founder. He was doing some side work, a few hours a week here and there. So you have to be cheap. You have to be lean. If you're paying $1,500, $2,000 a month on an apartment today with a full-time job, and then you're starting up, if you want to stay there, you had better save quite a bit of money, probably just to cover the rent. You're going to just save like 20, 25 grand just for that, right? Yeah. For a year. And then you have to account for living expenses, each month, which is easily going to run you another 1,000 or more on top of that. So, if you're in New York, or in the Bay Area, that's like that's table stakes. That's what you need to do just to be in the game for a year. If you're living elsewhere where the cost of living is lower, then it's not going to be as as important to save up that much money. But again, aim for a year, and as much as you can save before you start up, that's ideal. So I wouldn't do it the way I did, which is I only saved up for a year. If you can save up for more over a longer period, that's ideal.
Yeah. And you said also, I think I remember last time we hung out, you weren't so. Like, you might not have, like, done the whole apartment thing again, like, sharing, like, I think it was, like, one bedroom with, like, 2 other guys or something.
No, there was 2 bedrooms. I had my own room.
1 bedroom, 4 guys. That's what it was, right, Brian?
No,
4 guys, 1 bedroom.
No, nothing like that.
Okay. But, I mean, I remember, like, your main, like, the main point that you wanted me to walk away from was, like, I did this, I would not recommend it.
But you were living and working with your co-founder.
Yes.
Right, so was that something you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it worked fine, It's so funny because you mentioned the social network earlier.
Yeah.
And that was something that it was in 2010, and we were just starting out, and we were, like, super pumped up to be living this life where we get up in the morning, we go to our long IKEA table next to each other, and we work all day. And that was sustainable for, probably 6 months or so. But then we eventually moved to WeWork. We had our own office or desk at the co-working space, and that gave a little bit more balance to what we were doing. But yeah, I mean, if you can make it work with your co-founder where you're living with them, and it's affordable because you're sharing that cost, then go for it. Not everyone is in a position to do that. We were 24 at the time, so that was fine. But if you're like 30 or if you're married or whatever it is, it's much harder to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Harder to put up with other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you find if you have a girl or a guy or some partner that you're dating and they're willing to put up with you during that, like, you got to stick with them.
Yeah, that seems unreasonable.
Yeah, very cool. There's also something else that I forgot to mention while we were on break that people wanted to talk about. Whether you would recommend, like, how do you prepare, like, professionally, like, financially, we just talked about that, how to prepare, but then professionally, like, do you prefer people, like, what do you think that people have to work a little bit before they start up? Do you think people can just start up, like, straight out of college? Do you think people even need college? I think there are a lot of right answers, and people have seen success in any of these directions, but
one thing, just to add on to the whole financial part, I was fortunate to start when I did because from a health insurance standpoint, I was covered by my mother because I was under 26.
Right.
And then, I was able to be on the family plan. If you're past 26, then you have to think about getting, like, freelancers insurance or, whatever the other options are out there. So that's an important consideration to make. Yeah. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that
up. So your question was around preparation.
Yeah,
and,
like, a lot of people want to know, like, should they, like, get, like, a job at a startup? Should they get, like, any job at all? I mean, people, there's this notion, and I might point to, like, Chris Dixon for making this idea popular that the best way to prepare to be at a startup is to work at a startup. I personally would disagree with that. I mean, given, like, my experience so far, but I don't know how idiosyncratic or normal my experience is, but and I don't know, like I think other people might be wondering, like, should I work at a big company, small company? Should I work at all? What industries? What kind of jobs should I do? Should I work at all?
I think it's just going to be case by case, right? It depends on what you're trying to do. If your startup is going to be focused on enterprise and working with large companies, then for sure you want experience with that. Because if you don't understand how those organizations function, then you're going to have a very hard time partnering and selling to those companies with whatever you're building. So I think that's really important. If you're talking about your kind of standard consumer tech sort of startup, for sure, I think it's useful to work at one first if the opportunity makes sense for you. Again, it just depends on the case. I wouldn't work at it just because you're looking for experience.
Yeah.
But if it's something that genuinely interests you and you want to put a lot of your work and your effort into that, then that's valuable because it'll carry over. For me personally, I didn't have any startup experience before I started Photocracy, and my work experience with the other prior jobs wasn't terribly relevant either. So I think there's nothing wrong with if you're like fresh out of college or still in college, go for it. I think that's definitely the right time to start doing it, particularly if you're still in college, because Paul Graham talks about the fact that college is this moment when you're learning and you're surrounded by all these really talented and smart people. It's probably going to be the last time you're in an environment like that. It's very unique. So take advantage of that. Find the people who are going to be your co-founders and your partners and so on and so forth. Yes, you're still in this academic mode, but I think oftentimes it's the folks who haven't necessarily been like imprinted or influenced by working at another company that leads to some of the most high potential outcomes. So I think, again, it's case by case, and you have to evaluate like, what are you trying to build, and what relevant experience do you need with that?
I totally agree. I think it comes down to the same thing for everyone, which is like, what am I good at, and what do I know about, and do I need to learn more, or am I good to go? Am I ready? I think it just like if you're a high schooler and you probably want to start something that is good for high schoolers, whatever, right? You don't want to start something that doesn't make sense, right? It's like I think it's. There's nothing prescriptive. I think it just comes down to, again, like, who are you? What do you do? What are you good at? What do you like? That kind of thing. Right.
I think the other side is just risk profile too. Like, you could spend 5 years learning on the job about all this other stuff that you're worried about doing on your own later on. That's fine. I think then you run into the risk of, okay, now you have lifestyle, you have a certain level of expectation around what you're doing in your daily life, and it's easy to lose the momentum to actually even start anything at all. But if you're going to say, hey, I have a high enough risk profile or risk tolerance to go after this and know I'm going to just learn on the job, then go with that route. So it just depends on what level of risk you're willing to take.
Mm-hmm. I have a take on this, even though I'm just starting out, as I said. But so I think when people are starting out, it's really helpful to have at least one top-line skill set. And so I say that this is a phrase kind of that like I just came up. I'm sure other people have other words for it, but it's like, top line versus bottom line on your cash flow statement. The top line is your revenues. The bottom line is your revenues minus every single itemized expense to get to the bottom line. And what I call a top-line skill set is something that will help literally just grow your top line. And a bottom line skill set is something that will help to reduce every single expense when you go from your top line and trickle down to your bottom line. And in my opinion, I think when people are wondering if they should do school or work, I don't have a lot of strong opinions on that, but like the one strong opinion that I have is that you need a top line level skill set. So like a lot of developers are in demand because it's very easy to attribute. Like if I hire this guy, I can probably ship this many more products. Like sellers are like incredibly easy it's incredibly easy to ascribe how much like extra revenue you're pulling in, how much extra business you're bringing in if you hire an extra seller with these connections. All of these kind of things, which are actually product facing, user facing, these are top line level skill sets. And in my opinion, you always need one of those. And I think in the long run, you're actually more employable. Even if you don't want to start up, having a top line level skill set increases the number of options for you because every single fucking company needs to grow their revenue. You can be a one-person startup and you still need to increase your revenue. But if you're a bottom-line skill set, so if I don't want to like step on anyone's toes and like piss people off, but like in my opinion, like a project manager is a bottom-line skill set because you're increasing efficiencies. Like the demand for that job comes about because things are just too inefficient. So you're cost-cutting, you're trying to improve the bottom line. A product manager, I personally would argue that's a bottom line skill set because, again, you want to put people on the same page. You want to like increase efficiencies. I think there are people who would disagree, but like in my mind, like you need at least one top line level skill set, which you might be able to get in school. Mostly, I doubt that. I think if you want to do something crazy like AI, like machine learning, like that kind of crazy stuff, like like school I think would be helpful. But otherwise, I think like if you're wondering if you want to start up like right out of school, like I think you totally could if you feel like it. Just do whatever the fuck you want. But really, if you're not like jumping to do it, and if like you just want to like be employed, because like employment is fun. I'm gonna be honest. Like even though like I got frustrated with it and I just wanted to just be by myself, like I had a lot of fun being employed. I met a lot of cool people, picked up a lot of good mentors, and hopefully I created some positive impact for people who worked with me as well. But I think you need to decide what kind of role you want your job to play for you, and like what you want to get out of the job. You can't just be like, maybe if I work here, like I'll receive this amorphous benefit, which will help me start up. Like you need to know exactly what you want out of it, and I would strongly advocate for a top line level skill set.
I think that's interesting. That's interesting in that, and that makes me want to ask Brian this question, which is, what do you think your top line skill set is?
That's a good question. I think starting out was. It was ill-defined or maybe non-existent. Honestly, I mean, in a practical
I don't think
sense,
you need it. I mean, Brian is, people like Brian prove that like you totally can like don't actually need to do that. But it's like
he has no skills, but he still did something
still
interesting. Awesome. In the beginning, I was directly involved with building the product, but not in a great way. It was terrible design skills and front end, and I was just kind of learning as I was going, but I was getting it done. These days, I think it's really about, this sounds corny, but it's about setting the vision, pitching, getting this out into the world, leading the team. But, it wasn't easy getting to this point. A lot of the hard work was in the first couple of years with being directly involved with the product building and the marketing and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So nowadays, this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier when I think about serial entrepreneurs. If I was starting out all over again on a new company, I know I have the experience to recruit a team, to raise money, to define a product and have a hand in building it and all these other functions. Am I going to be a maker, though, anymore? Like, it's important to think about makers versus managers, right? And I would sit myself squarely in the manager role right now, and that you can slot managers into an organization depending on their size, but when you're first starting out, it's hard to say. I don't know what that would look like anymore, to be quite honest with you, because I've spent the last 4 years building up to where we are now, and it's clear that my role is important in this particular context. So if you're someone who doesn't have a very well-defined skill, like I'm a developer, I'm an amazing marketer, user acquisition, designer, whatever it is, and you're like non-technical founder, which I would imagine a lot of people listening to this are, you have to be a maker or a seller in some way and develop that skill. And my guess is if you're non-technical, then you're about selling. And that's actually a kind of amorphous thing to do in the early days. But that's like the number one thing you got to be focused on.
So one of the common things that probably fits in with this sort of what Brian was saying and top line versus bottom line is that one of the things I've heard often is that if you want to work at a startup or be an early employee at a startup or start a startup, you have to do one of two things. You have to either sell or code, right? And so for most of the non-technical people, you have to, even if you're not comfortable with it, you have to be selling or be this sort of hustler role, which is like, I'm going to do whatever's necessary. And so for that person, it's not really a top line skill set. It's more of like a, jack of all trades. But for those people, there are some people who are really, really good at it and others who suck, and there are a lot of people who suck at it. But the thing is, it's harder to tell who really sucks at it because it's really not
clear. You can't really put that on your resume. It's like even I think, in my opinion, like these kind of, in my experience, like working at startups, like these like jack of all trades types of people, like they're super important. Like they're so important, but like they're not. It's just difficult to describe their skill set. And
they
their
didn't
value
set out
add.
to be that, right?
Yeah.
It was probably a very particular situation that brought them to that company, and it's not like the standard track of I've built a resume of things that I've built. I've demonstrated my value here. I'm going to join this startup because lots of people want me. It's probably a very unique situation where I'm particularly well suited to help sell whatever this product is and do business development and all that sort of stuff. I've seen that case a few different times where there is that general BD, jack of all trades person. In some cases, they do really, really well. In some cases, they're just... you look at the overall organization and you kind of scratch your head and wonder what are they actually doing there. But yeah, it's going to be a very case by case scenario. And for non-technical founders, you're just going to have to try to make your way into the right company if that's what you're trying to do. But I think it's a very difficult task in general.
Okay. Cool. And then I guess the last topic.
Yeah, I would just say that I think
sorry.
that you need to be good at something. Yeah.
Okay, very
That's the
clearly.
thing.
Makes sense.
Or feel confident that you can figure stuff out. Because there are a lot of people who are just not good at anything. And for those people, I would say that you definitely need to figure something out. But yeah, the people that are good at stuff, you can tell just by talking to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very cool. And last thing that people really wanted to talk about non-technical founders. What do you do if you want to start a tech company if you're not a non-technical founder? Like, what are the options here? It's like find a technical founder, hire a developer, learn yourself. And as far as I can tell, I'm not sure what the other options are, but I think those are the main three that people talk about. I'm going to say that again. You can either find a technical co-founder, which has implications on the equity and everything like that, decision making. You can hire a developer, so that could be a freelancer, or you can just learn to code yourself. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I would just jump in and say, I was talking to a non-technical person about this the other day. Well, first, I think it's dependent on what you're trying to do, right? But I think you should probably choose something that is obviously within a non-technical founder's skill, potential thing, right? So you shouldn't be doing nuclear energy startup or whatever, unless you're have some other thing in that. But yeah, I think the best thing to do. Generally, if you're a non-technical founder, in the abstract, is to do a startup that doesn't require any tech up front. So, I mean, I met the co-founder of Zirtual, CTO of Zirtual, a while ago, and he told me that even very late, Zirtual is a very successful personal assistant service. It's a virtual assistant service, and he said even very late into the game when they were making a good deal of money, there was no tech behind the product. Basically, they, if you signed up, it would trigger an email to the founder, and then she would go email the pool of assistants she had and find one, and then email. Basically, it was all email. There was no product there, and they did that for a really long time. And I think. And then, similar stories like co-founder of Zero Cater. Zero Cater is like this catering service. He started by just doing it in a spreadsheet, right, and calling people. So I think that's sort of like the canonical type tech startup that a non-technical founder wants to start. But there are other similar so that's where I would suggest someone to start. The twist is if you want to do.
I actually want to interject real quick. As a developer, that's how I would want to start too.
Yeah.
But that's
true. Yeah. I think that's a good point. If that was the type of business
it goes back to the notion of selling before you make anything.
Exactly.
Right?
I think that sort of twist is like Wani Lo. I don't know how to pronounce it.
That's correct.
Thank you. Maybe you said it to me the other day.
Yeah.
The founder, I think Daria.
Daria.
Yeah, I forgot her name. I think she was non-technical.
Yeah.
But she had a background in product management or something like that. I think she started off with contractors, because she had a vision for a product, and it was a tech product. It was a product that required some. I think she did the mock-ups or whatever, right? Showed it to people, blah blah blah. But so she started with freelancers, and then eventually brought on a technical co-founder. And that was a hard process to do, because as a non-technical person, it's hard to identify good technical talent, right? And so she had a few false starts in there before she really hit on it, but. But I think those are that's what a non-technical founder brings to the table, the ability to make sure that you can sell before you build all that. So you better go do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say, in general, you want to have a partner. I think you want to have a technical co-founder. There's been a lot of ink spilled on kind of what that process is like and the best way to approach that and so on and so forth. It's not easy. But your job as a non-technical co-founder, by definition, if you're not making, you have to sell. And so this notion of validation through Google Forms and email triggers is a form of selling. You've validated the market, and you can actually start running the business yourself without any lines of code being written. And so I totally agree with Walter's approach. If the problem that you're trying to solve can actually be addressed through that approach, definitely go and do that. But at some point, you are going to need a technical co-founder, and you're going to need a team of engineers and product builders in general. And so there's going to be multiple paths to finding that. If you've already proven the business works, it's very easy to sell somebody. If you don't have any business traction and you just have a concept and a vision, then that's the other route where you're basically selling the vision to other people and you're trying to find the right person to partner with. Again, that just goes back to the question of, can you sell anything at all? If you can't sell anyone on that concept, then you got to go back to the drawing board, right? Digging a little bit into that idea of a technical co-founder or co-founder at all, I think it is inherently valuable. I don't worry about the equity stuff and governance. I think that those are important questions to ponder. But at the end of the day, a startup is really fucking hard, and having a partner that you can really trust and confide in and work together to build something significant is worth its weight in gold. If you're just doing it by yourself, and I'm not saying solo founders haven't made it, there are plenty of examples who have, but I think it's quite ideal if you can find a partner who's able to build well and you're the one selling it. It's a nice combo to have. If you're the kind of hero solo founder, it requires a lot of special things to line up, and it's a rare situation to have that.
Got it. Okay. And one thing I have noticed because like people just always ask me, I've never hired a single person in my life, but people always ask me like, how do I find developers to hire? The only like really strong opinion that I have about this is that you need to decide what role you want the technology to play in your company. And I think Walter brought up a lot of really strong examples where technology didn't have to play a role early on. If you want your technology to be a core competency, if you want other tech companies to look at your technology and admire it, then I think you probably need a technical co-founder. Like, are we running out of space? All right. Yeah, but I mean, like, otherwise, like, if you just like think you need technology, but you're very like whatever about like how high quality the technology will be, as long as it works, and like honestly, I personally would not stress too much about the developer, but that's just me. So yeah, if you want good technology, definitely get a technical co-founder. Otherwise, like, I don't know, get whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's interesting. I would say that I think the twist is sort of that, you probably want. We good? Oh, we're done?
You still have to leave.
Close it out.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, are we still running right now?
No.
Or wait. I didn't realize that meant that like we were like running. We were actually like out at that moment. Yeah. Maybe we can just continue the audio awkwardly and
whoopsie doodle.
We'll just like show some pictures, I guess. But
No, I can. I asked you. That's why I asked you.
oh well, I didn't know what this meant. I figured that was like, oh, we have like a few more minutes. That's all right. I mean, we can just like talk it out, I guess. Yeah, that's really all I had to say on that. That's all I can say right now, personally.
Yeah. I was just going to say the twist is sort of that, you can configure the concept. You can twist the concept to require more or less technology. And probably non-technical founders would be well advised to twist it so that it's not technical. And there are some interesting companies where, they started out as really not really technical companies that just built some interesting technology.
Yeah, but the other side, I think, is many people are naturally thinking about mobile, right? And starting off in mobile, in some cases, they never have a website at all. They just have apps. In that case, you're almost definitely going to want a co-founder because mobile app development is, for one, not trivial, but two, really expensive overall, right? So having someone who has that competency who can partner with you to do that, I think is super important, because otherwise you're going to be paying contractors like easily $75 to $100 an hour, if not more, and most people just simply can't afford that. So I think that's if you're going mobile first / only, get a partner unless you have deep pockets.
Cool. All right. I guess we'll close out then. Let's see. So Walter, wait, what's going on? Sorry, we're giving Joanna a really, really hard time right now. Oh, no, it's okay. No. I mean, I thought we were going to be done in that time. I guess we just all ramble a lot. But, all right, so I guess we're going to close out. Walter, do you want to tell people where they can learn more about yourself and your company?
Yeah. Check out iDoneThis.com. Sign up. Free to sign up.
Be super productive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested in getting in better shape and taking better care of their health and fitness, check out Fitocracy, FITOCRACY. We're available on the App Store, Google Play, and our website, so check it out.
Cool, thanks you guys. And again, this is Founders Gambit. We have a newsletter. All we're going to do is let you know when we have more episodes. We're not going to sell you anything. And yeah, so check out foundersgambit.com so I can tell you when we have more episodes. So thanks, you guys. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks,
you,
Dillon.
Joanna.
Thanks, Dillon.
All right.
See ya. Cool. Sweet, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. I hope you guys had a good time.
Yeah, no, it was cool.